Every word she says about Barack Obama is negative. I can't think of her sitting there just waxing poetic about him, complimenting, he's brilliant, he's a great dad, he was the greatest president, whatever a normal wife of Barack Obama would say. Every time she opines, it's something that reflects poorly on him, how he's insensitive, how he's not a talker, how he doesn't know how to relate to people, he doesn't keep the same schedule as she does, and now we're talking about you can have a...
Michelle Obama wasn't the only one caught in Megyn Kelly's line of fire. The polished image the public had admired for years was pulled apart piece by piece. Kelly dismantled the glossy magazine covers, the familiar flattering narratives, and the picture-perfect lifestyle that had long been presented as genuine. What many thought was natural charm was revealed to be careful brand building, from the crafted stories to the rehearsed smiles. This wasn't delivered as friendly debate or polite critique. It was a sharp takedown. The carefully protected persona Michelle had cultivated was left exposed, her once untouchable reputation shaken under the weight of Kelly's attack.
Still just as bitter as ever. There's such a great new spin of complaints here. Here's one from her most recent episode, which still on YouTube she's got 200,000 subscribers. It's really amazing that now she's been doing this for how many episodes? She's been literally on every podcast of the left wing promoting it, and that's still all she's managed to.
For years, the media has crowned Michelle Obama as a kind of political royalty. Every gesture, no matter how staged or self-serving it might appear, has been met with endless applause. But Megyn Kelly wasn't willing to go along with the show. She stepped in, refusing to add another layer of polished praise or glowing commentary. Instead, she tore away the glossy magazine spreads and the picture-perfect social media snippets, determined to reveal a less flattering version of the truth.
On a podcast called Diary of a CEO. It's kind of rings a bell like a founder kind of situation. And once again, wants you to know how awful it is to be married with children.
There are many natural reasons why marriage, infertility, trying to have kids makes things difficult. It's like, I try to tell couples, of course it's hard. Just listen to what I said.
For years, Michelle Obama has been presented as the model of a relatable public figure, the kind who supposedly understands the struggles ordinary Americans deal with every day. Megyn Kelly, however, wasn't buying it. To her, this image clashed with the reality of someone who had spent most of her adult life in luxury resorts, mingling with millionaires, and surrounding herself with elite circles. Kelly pointed out the contrast with biting sarcasm. Michelle's toughest decision wasn't about real hardships, but rather whether the lighting looked better from a private yacht or a Gulfstream jet.
Here she is interviewing Dr. Sharon Malone, perhaps better known as former Attorney General Eric Holder's wife. And therein lies the problem, as these two ladies, married to two very famous men, are pissed that they are not the alpha in terms of popularity and recognition.
Megyn Kelly later exposed what she described as Michelle's so-called activism, efforts that looked impressive in headlines but faded once the cameras stopped rolling. Yet the much-publicized fitness push turned into a red tape disaster, school lunches were criticized as unappealing, and the Let's Move campaign became more of a self-congratulatory tour than a solution to real problems. Kelly framed all of this as the perfect example of Michelle's public image, sweeping gestures that seemed bold and groundbreaking on the surface, but delivered little real change underneath.
It's if you're having some issues in your marriage, it's not you, it's the process of marriage. It's just all hard, because guess what happens when it all works out right? You know what you end up with? Babies. Little people with their own sense of everything. They mess you up. You love them dearly, but they're a hassle.
What? There's something wrong with this person. She's seriously depressed. She has the most negative, dark outlook on life I've ever heard from a public figure. Certainly one who's been given so...
Then came the book Empire. Michelle's autobiography was sold as an unfiltered, honest reflection of her life, but Megyn Kelly saw it differently. Less a raw memoir, more a carefully engineered branding project crafted by a savvy corporate team. Every anecdote felt handpicked, every page polished until it could double as an inspirational quote for social media. The press embraced it wholeheartedly, not because it uncovered anything truly new, but because Michelle's carefully protected reputation was already treated as untouchable, leaving few willing to question it.
Now, Barack's come in, he's come out, and he's like, y'all still talking? He'll sit down for 5 minutes, be like, how are the boys? And the flip side, my husband, right? Because he golfs. And golfing takes as long as the first session of our, it takes 5 hours to golf. He'll golf with his buddies, come back, and be like, how's X? He's good. It's like, what'd y'all talk about? No.
Okay. So can I just say she stole that from a comedian who's all over Instagram. That little bit is all over Instagram. And forgive me, I can't remember the guy's name, but he does this whole bit about how he goes golfing with a guy whose wife just died, and he comes home and the wife's like, how's he doing? Fine. Well,
Megyn Kelly called out what she saw as blatant hypocrisy. For years, Michelle spoke of sacrifice, humility, and social responsibility, yet her post-White House life looked more like a billionaire's dream list. Multi-million-dollar speaking gigs, lucrative Netflix deals, and sold-out arena tours became her new normal, all while she continued to present herself as the voice of everyday Americans struggling with financial pressure. To Kelly, this wasn't just contradictory, it was insulting. And then came what Kelly described as Michelle's shadow politics. Despite repeatedly claiming she had no desire to run for office, Michelle remained firmly in the political spotlight. In reality, Kelly argued, her career had been devoted to strengthening the very political establishment she claimed she wanted to challenge. Far from lifting up the vulnerable, Michelle had spent much of her time bolstering her own influence and brand. The designer outfits, the red carpet appearances, the perfectly curated social media posts, all of it, Kelly suggested, was less about leadership and more about the glamour of political celebrity.
Obama, listen to this.
And at this phase of my life, I'm in therapy right now because I'm transitioning. I'm 60 years old. I've finished a really hard thing in my life with my family intact. I'm an empty nester. My girls are in, they've been launched. And now for the first time, as I've said before, every choice that I'm making is completely mine. I now don't have the excuse of, well, my kids need this or my husband needs that or the country needs that. So how do I think about this next phase?
Once again, speaking a reference to her time as First Lady negatively, and I'm transitioning. I mean, an interesting choice of words, given how the internet refers to her.
Next, Megyn Kelly turned to Michelle's elevated cultural status. She argued that Michelle is placed so high on a pedestal that questioning her image is often treated as an act of hostility. To Kelly, that was exactly the problem. When someone is considered untouchable, scrutiny becomes more necessary, not less. Power, even when wrapped in charm and warm smiles, is dangerous without accountability. Kelly also dissected the speeches. Stripped of the dramatic pauses and polished gestures, words often celebrated as profound sounded more like recycled slogans you might find on a graduation card. She suggested Michelle had mastered the art of speaking at length without risking any real offense. To Kelly, Michelle wasn't just a public figure. She was an entire brand. Her name stretched across movies, cookbooks, and endless marketing ventures, more reminiscent of a pop star empire than the people's voice she claimed to be. And the more her wealth grew, Kelly argued, the harder it became to believe she truly spoke for ordinary Americans.
He was laughing, he was yelling down to a buddy down below. They were joking, he was smiling. He was covered in dirt, to your life motto. And I thought, look at this guy in this dark, dank, smelly, dirty place with lots of danger. Not just this cherry picker, but also the live rail that he's working on, all the wires, having a great time. And then you look at her, and she's still, they have to be billionaires by now.
Sure.
Out on the yachts, the Martha's Vineyard $22 million estate, totally thriving young daughters who went to Harvard and USC. It's never going to be good enough. It's a mind frame, right? It's like your choice of how you're going to go through this life.
Michelle's carefully crafted photos weren't the only focus of Megyn Kelly's criticism. She accused the Obamas of transforming their post-presidency into a financial empire. The idea that they had stepped back into private life, she argued, was laughable. They operated more like a political dynasty, keeping their brand profitable, their network influential, and their reach intact. At the center of it all was Michelle, whose smile could sell not just products, but entire movements and ideas. Kelly's sharpest critique was aimed at the media's unwavering affection. In her view, Michelle seemed immune to negative press. Every appearance was framed as iconic, every Instagram caption hailed as brilliant, and every outing treated like a historic event. Kelly claimed that once the double standard was revealed, the fantasy crumbled. Anyone else with that level of access and privilege would face relentless scrutiny. Instead of the image of a heroic leader rising above challenges, Kelly argued the reality looked more like a skilled operator, someone who knew exactly how to use the system while convincing the public she was just like them.
I think that's a very unhealthy position to take, or to advise other people to gut it out for 10 years of misery. I mean, first of all, what that would do to you physically alone, I would never want to sign up for that. And secondly, does she not realize that by talking shit about her partner of decades, first black president of the United States, she's talking shit about herself? Lady, you chose.
Kelly's criticism didn't stop at Michelle's career. It went after the culture that placed her beyond reproach. She argued that the celebrity worship mindset had turned political figures and their families into lifestyle brands shielded from genuine scrutiny. In Kelly's eyes, Michelle wasn't just part of this trend. She was one of its most polished and successful faces. Moving through the public stage with the confidence of someone who knows the headlines will always be flattering and the cameras will always find her best angle, Michelle seemed untouchable. Kelly pushed back against that image, insisting it wasn't authenticity at work, but years of calculated branding. Every laugh that seemed spontaneous, every casual snapshot, every remark that came across as unplanned. Kelly claimed they were all carefully rehearsed, edited, and tested for maximum effect. What looked like natural charisma was, in her view, simply branding at its finest. And Michelle's aura of composure, Kelly added, came not from effortlessly handling pressure, but from the fact that the press rarely highlighted her missteps. Her power remained unshaken, not because she never stumbled, but because the media refused to show when she did.
There's the first one about how difficult it is for black women like Michelle to articulate their pain.
The mothers who came before us often carried their struggles in silence. They rarely spoke of the burdens they bore, and they made the hardest sacrifices look effortless. Because of that, people assumed the pain wasn't there. As Michelle herself once noted, especially for black women, expressing hardship has never been welcomed. Society doesn't expect it, and few seem to care. Megyn Kelly, however, argued that Michelle's situation went far beyond cultural resilience or societal expectation. She claimed Michelle enjoyed a unique kind of protection, the freedom to wade into any political or cultural debate without truly risking backlash. Kelly called it selective involvement and stepping in just enough to keep influence alive, but never so far as to face real consequences. Kelly also underscored the contradictions in Michelle's dual role as both political spouse and cultural icon. The media minimized the extravagance, but Kelly pointed to it directly. Lavish vacations, multi-million-dollar estates, wardrobes filled with designer labels. Michelle branded herself as a champion of working families, yet Kelly argued her lifestyle looked more like a glossy fashion spread than the life of the people she claimed to represent. Private jets, not shared struggles, separated her from the everyday American. And with biting irony, Kelly mocked the idea that someone sipping champagne aboard a luxury yacht could truly embody the hardships of ordinary families.
Knowing that there are divorce rumors and, she's not showing up for him, whether it's at the Jimmy Carter funeral or the Trump inauguration or the basketball game he just went to in LA, when visiting their daughters and then dinner with the daughters was not there. Here she is talking about it. If it were me, I would say something nice about him. I would say he's just so charming. It was meant to be. I knew he could heal the earth in the way he did. There was only one person who could do it, and it was my husband, Barack Obama, whatever. Then she gets on to talking a little bit about him personally, and this is how that sounded.
A girlfriend comes to visit. It's usually like, you gotta stay for 2 days because it's going to take us
So much time to capture in.
Kelly also took aim at Michelle's speaking style, criticizing her tendency to downplay raw emotion in front of large audiences. She argued that Michelle had mastered the art of weaving in just enough personal anecdotes to draw listeners in before pivoting to moral lessons tailored to her brand. Kelly labeled this strategy emotive scaffolding, stories that feel moving but don't build toward anything concrete. It was effective, yes, but also safe. By avoiding controversial stances or firm solutions, Michelle ensured her popularity remained intact. Kelly extended this critique to the Obamas' lucrative media ventures. The multi-million-dollar Netflix deal, packaged as a noble mission to share powerful stories, struck her as hypocritical. After years of railing against corporate excess, Kelly noted, The couple had become precisely the kind of power players they once condemned. To her, the goal wasn't storytelling, it was control. Even outside of office, Michelle and Barack maintained a grip on the cultural narrative. The frustration, Kelly suggested, wasn't just about Michelle's individual choices, but also about the mythology surrounding her. A sense of nostalgia has framed her time in the White House as a golden era, free of scandal or flaws. That romanticized lens shields her from scrutiny and heightens the sense of double standards. And while Michelle often reflects on her roots or compares herself to those who came before her, Kelly argued that such reflections serve more as image polish than as genuine acknowledgement of shared struggles.
This is the perfect soundbite after the discussion we just had about how the left looks at everything through this identity. You could say prism. You could also say prison, where she's talking about how women aren't allowed to articulate their pain, about how they just suck it up. They don't show that, as if men never do that. Men are known, aren't they, for articulating their pain? That's what you think of when you think of man, traditionally.
Kelly pushed back against the glowing nostalgia that surrounds Michelle, calling it misleading. Every administration has its scandals, she argued, but Michelle's carefully managed image has made hers seem almost non-existent. Kelly also criticized the power structure that shields and amplifies her voice. Without ever running for office, Michelle can shape political and cultural conversations, her words echoed and magnified by loyal influencers, media outlets, and public figures. Yet, Kelly claimed, this influence rarely trickles down to real communities. Instead, it becomes top-down messaging disguised as inspiration. Kelly argued that this strategy allows Michelle to stay relevant without taking on the risks of policymaking or legislation. Even her public appearances, Kelly noted, seem suspiciously timed, lining up neatly with election cycles, party disputes, or major political showdowns. To Kelly, it wasn't coincidence, but calculation. Another way of keeping Michelle firmly in the spotlight while maintaining her untouchable brand. This isn't an accident, Kelly argued. Michelle's ability to maintain her influence came, she said, from a deliberate balance, knowing exactly when to step forward and when to step back. It was part of a pattern that Kelly had highlighted again and again. Michelle's image wasn't built on chance, but on careful planning, flawless timing, and an unshakable media shield. Michelle's story is often celebrated as a journey from humble beginnings to national prominence, a narrative of grit and perseverance. Yet Kelly insisted this version was incomplete. The rise was not simply about relentless personal struggle. It was also shaped by elite education, powerful allies, and a network of connections that most Americans could never access. What the public saw as natural charm or inspirational drive, Kelly reframed as the product of years of strategic brand management. This echoed Kelly's earlier critiques, from the multi-million-dollar book deals and Netflix contracts to the lavish vacations and designer wardrobes. Michelle's life often looked less like the experience of working families and more like the polished fantasy of a lifestyle empire. Even her activism, Kelly said, followed the same formula. Grand gestures that played well in headlines but rarely delivered lasting results. The same could be said of her cultural presence. Michelle was praised for speeches that felt moving in the moment, but stripped of performance, boiled down to safe, predictable platitudes. She was celebrated as a leader for the people while operating with the insulation of celebrity privilege. To Kelly, this combination of selective involvement, well-timed appearances, and powerful backing explained how Michelle remained untouchable. Her success was not a miracle of perseverance alone. It was a carefully constructed system designed to ensure her influence never faded.